Okay, folks, I think I have found a point where I can consider this lathe operational. I don't want to use the word complete or done because a project like this is never truly done. You're always going to find something else you want to add to it or something else you want to do to it. So for now, we're going to call this operational. We'll start with the paint color, and the reason I chose the navy blue paint color is because this was owned by the US Navy during World War II. So I wanted to pay tribute to that lineage. All the dials, levers, and handles I painted red because your eye is drawn to that color difference, and that is for parts that you're supposed to touch. And that also keeps your hand from inadvertently darting off to go somewhere like it doesn't belong, such as the spinning lathe chuck. So coming in a little bit closer here, the next project, or the next part of this project, I should say, is finding a proper enclosure for my VFD. I have it bolted up to this rack here that holds my shelving, and that's not the best setup for this. I want to get a proper enclosure, that way I can have those wires not exposed out in the open like that, because those are a fire hazard and an electrical hazard. So trying to find a box that can fit in. This VFD and the control box here that is on this control arm, we'll call this red part here the control arm, that was all done by the original owner of this machine, and it works pretty darn well. You have a potentiometer right here where you will dial in your speed that you want, so fast or slow. You can go all the way down to 10 hertz. So let's see if I can zoom in or zoom out right. Flip up the switch, and that engages your chuck. And having a variable frequency drive on a lathe like this is a huge game changer. It allows you to get a much better surface finish on whatever part you're running because different materials require different feeds and speeds. And this allows you to really dial in that number so you get that proper surface finish. So if you have the option to get one of these or upgrade your current lathe, I would highly recommend it. It is a big game changer. Next thing we'll go to here is the belt cover. So you can see I have my 4-step pulley right there. This is just a serpentine belt. I was able to glue this back together with crazy glue. It works just fine. And then underneath here is the motor housing. And you can see I did not paint this, and the reason I chose not to paint this is because there's nothing wrong with this original paint. I cleaned it up as best I could with some degreaser because there's a ton of grease and chips that fall down in here, but it's still, protected from corrosion. And the video is not doing a very good job of showing it, but this is actually staining in here. This isn't rust. You can run your fingers over here and it's not rough at all. So that's probably showing up as rust in this video. I did repack the bearings in the motor and re-oil and clean out the bearings in here. And I did get this thing to work too. As you can see, there's a linkage right there that goes down to your motor. So when I lift it up on this handle, that rotates up and it pulls up the motor, which gives you slack in your belt, which allows you to move your belt over to whatever speed you want. The gearbox I was able to clean up and re-oil, put new felts in the bottom rung right here. I did not take out the top part of the gear housing just because those are all press fit gears, and I didn't feel like it would be any real benefit as it's such a slow turning shaft that I felt the old felts that were in there they still looked in pretty good condition, so I didn't really feel comfortable going that in depth of tearing the whole thing apart because I've watched other videos on this, and digging into these gearboxes can be quite the daunting task. So I only did about 75% of that, cleaned it up as best I could, re-oiled it, and it's running just fine. I don't use it all that much, so I'm not worried about excessive wear coming from it. That was just a personal decision I made because I didn't want to cause damage or not be able to put it back together. As far as the carriage here, I was able to get this thing completely apart. I did have to order a new half nut off eBay for this. The one that was on here was so worn down that it would not engage on the threads here, and it would just sit there and slip. So bought a new one, and as you can see, some of these threads are a little bit worn. Starting to see how they're starting to taper in compared to the outside where they're just perfectly square. Got the ways cleaned up as best I could. I didn't go too aggressive on a Scotch-Brite pad in here because I didn't want to remove any metal from excessive scrubbing. And here's a neat little gadget. So if you go onto Thingiverse, it is a website where people upload 3D printed files of things they make. And this is a dial indicator holder that goes on this BXA tool post. And you can use that for dialing in your parts. And they also have on there, this is a two-piece build here. This is a carriage stop with a dial indicator holder. These dial indicators are just your Harbor Freight special, which, I know that's not great for precision work, but for this type of work, they work great. And I have my old school magnetic base dial indicators, and I have my really nice ones in the toolbox. I don't keep those outside. We'll move down here. The South Bend emblem here, at one point it did have some paint on there, but it was so far gone that I just polished up with a 400 grit Scotch-Brite pad on a Dremel, and it worked great. You can see right there, there's your Navy Yard number. Here is a question for people out there that are probably more versed in these South Bends than I am. So this bottom plate here that the tailstock sits on, I had to actually put some shim stock under here to lift this tailstock up so it would match the height of the headstock. And I don't know if that was done intentionally by South Bend to have you raise it up to the exact height, or if that was just a fluke of this manufacturing process for this particular lathe. So if you have any information on that, please leave that information in the comments for me and other people to know, because I cannot find anything like that online. And I'm truly curious on why this tailstock was a little bit lower than the actual height of the headstock. We'll go around here, get a shot of the back side of this. You can see my wire in it definitely needs to be cleaned up. That light right there is actually a South Bend light. It has the proper bolt hole patterns. My buddy Matt hooked me up with that. I still need to find a cover for the back of this boom, I guess you'll call it, that control boom right there. And that's about everything that's in the back side here. As far as my organization for how I keep common use stuff, all my tools I keep up here on this rack. I just took some wood and milled it out. Use a Bridgeport for that, and this is where I keep all my tooling. I have gone to Insert Carbide. So this is AccuSize. They're a Canadian company. I'm super happy with their product. You can find them on Amazon and eBay. I think it's a little over $100 for this set here. But very happy with it. The geometry that comes with Insert Carbide is just way better than what you can get with a, well, let me back up. It's better than what I can get when grinding high-speed steel. So you get better chip management, and with carbide you can take a little bit bigger of a cut. Granted, there is always time for high-speed steel. Each project is different, requires a different tool for it. But for my level of expertise, I'm finding that this insert tooling works really well. I keep my, for drilling holes, I have this permanently chucked up in here. So I can just put this in a tailstock, start my hole, and then switch out to my chuck and then put a drill bit in there. Excuse me. And I find that having that stuff pre-chucked up like that for starting holes works really well. I have my live center, and then I also have back here, this is originally built for my 9-inch lathe, was this 4-jaw chuck. And I believe this came off of a Craftsman lathe, and I was able to find a bearing here that this thing fit in, and built this housing for it, welded it up, trued it up on the lathe, and that thing works pretty darn well for anytime you have something big or odd-shaped object. It works really well for supporting the back side of it. The South Bend 13 compared to the South Bend 9 is a truly night and day difference. The amount of mass that's in this machine is probably 3 times as much as my 9-inch. Let's pan over here so you can see. There's just not as much steel in here. And this 9-inch is a very capable lathe. I'm very happy with it, and I learned so much on this thing. And it's a great lathe. But for doing heavier cuts and, say, parting, just having that extra mass is just a huge game changer for me. The quick change gearbox, I didn't really think that I would like it that much. I mean, I don't mind, you know, switching out. This is a Model C, so I have to use change gears. I didn't mind having to do that, but I didn't realize how much time that took from the processes that I was doing. So being able to just grab a lever and switch over to whatever gear selection I wanted, that actually is really nice, and it's a huge time saver. So I think that's about everything I've covered here in this video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or message me privately. And I hope this inspires you to go out and do a restoration of your own. There's a ton of old neglected equipment out there, and unfortunately a lot of it goes to scrap yards. And you know, with a little time, effort, and elbow grease, which elbow grease is probably 90% of this. Everything else you can find online. There's a forum or there's a video like this that shows you how to do whatever you want to do. You can have machines like this. It just takes, you know, putting in the effort. So hopefully this inspires you to go out there and save some machines from the scrapyard. Anyway, thank you folks for watching. Please subscribe and have a great day.